Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Caruso III, and I am the publisher of the Capital Sports Report. I am also the host of the Capital Sports Report Live. Tonight, we are joined by a former sports broadcaster in the Philadelphia market, and Neil Hartman, who currently works at Rowan University. Welcome, Neil.
Appreciate it, Anthony. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
When you were younger, did you always want to be a sports broadcaster?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and at the time, my high school had one of 100 high school radio stations in the country. And my brother was a really good athlete. He's a couple years older than I was. He ended up playing college football, and I was just kind of walking through the building at the school, and I discovered this radio station, and it turned my life around. So when I was 14 years old, I got involved in a high school radio station, and from there, I went to work for the radio station in my hometown of Westport, Connecticut. And after that experience, I decided I wanted to really pursue television. So I went to Ithaca College in Central New York and pursued television there. In addition to radio, I was able to do Cornell basketball for a year. Guy actually I worked with is a broadcaster. He's been doing the Miami Heat games since their inception in the NBA. So that was a neat experience. And I worked for the Winter Olympics for ABC Sports. Was right next to Al Michaels when he said, "Do you believe in miracles?" I was up in Lake Placid, New York during that experience for about 4 weeks. And then I interned at ESPN in 1981. ESPN started in the fall of '79, and I was there a little after a year. They were on board. I was one of their first interns ever. They were in one building at that time when I was there, and it's now a whole college campus in Bristol, Connecticut. So after I graduated from college, went to Springfield, Massachusetts, worked at the ABC affiliate, then went to Toledo, Ohio, worked at the NBC affiliate, and I arrived in Philadelphia in 1988 and worked at an independent station, WPHL, and kind of moved around in Philadelphia in a number of different locations. And the rest is history. And now I'm in higher education. So that's my life in a nutshell right there.
You said in your first comment that you worked as an intern when Al Michaels was talking about the U.S. hockey team that beat the Soviet Union, I believe it was,
Yep.
in Lake Placid, New York, in the 70s.
1980.
1980. With Al Michaels, and Al Michaels is a very prominent name in sports broadcasting today. What was it like working with him at a young age?
So I was a production assistant. Basically, he needed stats. You got to get he needed some water or whatever it might be. Myself and another person, we handled those responsibilities. I worked in the Olympic arena venue. So I also did figure skating and hockey. So I was at every hockey game during that incredible run by the United States that won the gold. And it was kind of surreal. You were there sensing the euphoria of what happened over the course of a couple of weeks in Lake Placid. And ironically, it was about a few days before the start of the Olympics that the United States played the Russians at Madison Square Garden and actually got hammered, got lost big. It was a really embarrassing loss. And to see what they were able to do in the Olympics, to be able to send them to the gold medal game, and eventually beat Finland to win the gold medal. It was, I was mainly a basketball guy. I wasn't a really huge hockey fan, but like everybody in the country at that time, I became a hockey fan. It was an incredible opportunity for me to be there. And from Al Michaels, I mean, he'd never really done hockey before. He was wonderful to just be around and to see this guy who's the ultimate professional handle one of the biggest moments in certainly U.S. sports history, but you could say globally as well.
Yes. Also, you touched on being an intern at ESPN, which I didn't previously know. And like you said today, ESPN is a huge, huge sports company, one of the biggest probably in the world, and they bring a variety of different sports to us every day. What was it like working for them in their infancy?
Yeah, so I was there in January of 1981 till September of 81. It was my second semester junior year in college where I was able to spend 4 months in an internship And then I worked an additional 3-4 months, whatever it was, in Sports Center. So the initial internship moved me around the building, different departments that I would be able to work in. And I made it very clear that I was interested in being on the Sports Center and the news operation side. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to work in that environment. It's kind of neat to see some of the guys that were production assistants, the entry-level guys like I was, become some of the top executives at ESPN over time. And then also some of the broadcasters. I mean, Chris Berman, I knew Chris Berman even before he was at ESPN. He went to Brown University, and a friend of mine was a friend of his at Brown. And so I was, familiar with him and his background. He worked at a TV station in Hartford, Connecticut before getting the job at ESPN. And then just to be around that group during those early years was a wonderful experience and a memory that I'm fortunate enough to have had. But when I was there, it was one building, and when I was leaving, they were just opening up a second building. It was really exciting. They had this walkway from, the sky walkway going from one building to the other, and there was a lunchroom in there, and it was really exciting. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then now it's buildings all over the place in Bristol, Connecticut. So for me, I grew up in Westport, as I mentioned earlier, and for me, it was about an hour and 15-minute drive. And I also did morning radio in my hometown radio station during that time. So I would work the late night shifts. So I'd get in around 3 o'clock or so and leave around 1, 2 in the morning. And then I'd go drive back home. And then I'd do sports talk, sports updates at like 6 in the morning on the morning show until about 10. And then I took naps all over the place, but it worked out. It was a great experience, and I'm grateful to have had it.
When your career started to take off, I'll still touch on ESPN for a second. Because today a lot of people's goals in sportscasting want to work at ESPN. When you started to become very well known in your career, did you ever have a chance to go back, or did you ever have a itch to go back to maybe be a anchor on Sports Center?
Yeah, I had no interest in doing that. Ironically, it's I was very appreciative to be there and to see the growth of what has become this huge sports conglomerate. On the other hand, I just never really had an interest in going to ESPN. I love the fact that I was able to I landed in a city like Philadelphia where sports is so passionate, and you're covering teams and you're there, and particularly being at Comcast SportsNet, now NBC Sports Philadelphia, where the studio is located right there in the building, and the Eagles Lincoln Financial Field, their stadium's right outside our door. And then Citizens Bank Park for the Phillies is just down, like a couple blocks away. It was just a wonderful environment. So I never really had a desire to go back to ESPN. Again, I appreciated the opportunity, and I was really glad to have been there at that time, but I never really had a desire to go back and work at ESPN.
Okay. After becoming a sportscaster, you said you made several stops, but eventually you made a home in the Philadelphia market. You worked at KYW-TV, WPHL-TV, and eventually landing at Comcast SportsNet Philadelphia, which is today NBC Sports Philadelphia. What are some of your fondest memories working in this market?
So when I arrived in Philadelphia, I worked at WPHL-TV, which is an independent station at the time. They had the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's what I was really hired for, to be the studio pre- and post-game at halftime for the Philadelphia 76ers. And in that, actually the 1988 season, I came after the 88 season. So when the Sixers lost to the New York Knicks, ironically, they're now playing each other. It was the Knicks who Patrick Ewing was there, and they swept the floor, and they had completed a 3-game sweep of the Sixers. I was at that game. And then in the 89-90 season, the Sixers had a great year. They won the Atlantic Division, except there was this guy named Michael Jordan that got in their way to advance. But it was the emergence of Charles Barkley, and that team was just a really loaded team. And it's unfortunate because Jordan was there, but that Sixers team was one of the better teams that I've seen over the course of my career in the Philadelphia market. But then the following year, a couple years later, rather, we picked up the Phillies in 1993, and in 1993 they went from last place to first place from the year before, in '92, and so Channel 17 had the opportunity to broadcast those Phillies, and I again was the studio host for that as well, and that was just a really cool opportunity for me to be there covering a team that had caught the attention of the town because of their kind of no one expected it. It was totally unexpected what they were able to do. I actually got married in 1993, so I was doing Sixers and the Phillies, and I told my wife, I said, all right, we're going to get married in October because the Phillies aren't going to be very good. Sixers get going in later October, so we'll go and we'll get married in October. So we get married in the beginning of October. Well, lo and behold,
they make the World Series.
The Phillies made it into the playoffs, and they had a great run. So what happened was I got married I worked all night on a Thursday to have my rehearsal dinner on a Friday. Got married on a Saturday. Went away to the Bahamas Bermuda on a Sunday, and flew back on a Tuesday morning to be there for Game 1 of the playoffs on that Tuesday night. So, look, it was totally unexpected. My wife was great about it. We're still married. We're doing great. We've got 2 great kids, so everything worked out just fine. But that was a little bit of a unexpected occurrence during that season.
Yeah, and unfortunately in '93, the Phillies lost to the Toronto Blue Jays because of Joe Carter hitting a home run, I believe, off of Mitch Williams, wasn't it?
It was off Mitch Williams. It was in the ninth inning. The Phillies had a lead going into the ninth, and Mitch, that was Game 6 of the World Series in 1993, and the Phillies, unfortunately, the pitchers just had nothing left. Mitch had nothing left. Larry Anderson, who's now a broadcaster with the Phillies, he was in the inning before. He admitted, I had nothing left. No one had anything left. And the Toronto Blue Jays went back-to-back World Series. They won in '92 and again in '93. And Joe Carter had a walk-off home run in a World Series. I mean, that's a pretty iconic moment for him. And it was tough at the time, but it was still great memories for that entire season.
Yes. You talked about the 76ers with Charles Barkley. What was it like to report on him? I'm going to touch on years later when you report on Allen Iverson, but what was it like to report on Charles Barkley?
So Charles has become one of my closest friends. And It all stems back to those early years when we worked together, when I covered him all the time. I was there at practice every day. I'm a couple years older than Charles is, but we just created a really, really close relationship. And we played a lot of golf in the early '90s, and then when I did a TV show in 2008 that was on Golf Channel, it was called the Haney Project, and it was Tiger Woods' swing coach Hank Haney, and most people are aware of Charles back in the day. He's got a great golf swing now, but back in the day, his swing for about a 15-year period went totally south, and everyone knew it. And so I tried to bring Tiger's swing coach, who Charles had met and knew, and Charles together, and we did this show. So at the time, it was the most watched original program in the history of Golf Channel. So that was a fun experience for me to be able to see him try to get back with his golf game. I'm glad to report now that Charles and we do play golf together even to this day quite a bit, and so his game is doing great, and he's a wonderful, loyal friend. And I'm just blessed that he's been in my life. He's been an incredible influence in my life. And as a player, he was great because you never knew what he was going to say. That's what makes him a great broadcaster. And so reporters always gravitated towards Charles's locker, and he would give them the stuff they were looking for. And sometimes management didn't like that. His teammates didn't like it. The coach didn't like it, but he was a really talented player, and I was happy for him in '93 when he went to the '92-'93 season, when he went to the Phoenix Suns and he won the MVP in '93. That was the peak of his NBA playing career, coming off also the heels in '92 of winning the gold medal for the United States with the Dream Team. So he had a wonderful career, and he's had a pretty remarkable broadcast career as well.
For those that do not know, I am also in the Philadelphia market, based in New Jersey. I don't know if Neil is still in the Philadelphia market. Well, I don't know where exactly he lives in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. But when Neil worked at Comcast SportsNet, when he worked at, well, now it's called the Wells Fargo Center. Fans, when they were doing their shows back in the day, they'd be able to watch through the windows.
Yeah.
So what was that like for when you were broadcasting your shows and having these fans? Sometimes probably really maybe some drunk Ruley fans looking through the windows.
Yeah, so there's a big, you're kind of like in a fishbowl. There was these two big, very large windows that would expose the concourse to the studio, so fans could watch as they're there for any event, any event. It was great. Fans would bang on the windows at times. We had the ability to be able to shut. We had blinders there. We could always shut it if we wanted to. But the purpose was to have people seeing what we did and to get a vision and a look into what the studio was going on and what was doing. And it was great. It was a great idea. It worked out really well. Over time, we ended up closing up those windows because just the space. They wanted to utilize the more space in the studio, so they actually put a set in front of that window, and now it's all boarded up. You'd have no idea. They covered it up. So, but at the time, there is one story. I was working with Derek Gunn, and I'm pretty sure it was Gunner. There was a concert. It was a country concert. I can't remember who. And there were people outside the window, and there was a young lady that decided she wanted to get our attention. And I was sitting, I did not face the window. I was facing to my left here. So I'm looking this way. The window's off over here. But Derek's looking this way, and he just starts laughing. And it was a young lady that, again, was, she lifted her shirt, and she wanted to get our attention. And she got Derek's attention, and he just lost it. And so I didn't know what was going on at the time. And there's been other moments where people would do things, but that was a funny one because it was all in good play and fun, and it didn't go for a long period of time. Although we just had the giggles for the rest of the show. It was a memorable moment for sure.
Yes, for those that do not know, there's a very infamous moment that Neil was a part of. So about what was it? 22 years ago, maybe now.
2002.
2002, so 22 years ago. Neil was a part of Allen Iverson's practice rant comment press conference. So what was that like?
So what happened there was you got to have a little context here. The Sixers in 2001 had a tremendous season. They went to the NBA Finals. They lost the Lakers in 5 games. They actually won Game 1 of the NBA Finals against Kobe and Shaq. And they ran out of steam. They had nothing left. It was a remarkable season for Allen Iverson, who won the MVP in the NBA that year. And it was a great year. The following season, though, the Sixers didn't have a great year, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs in Game 5 at Boston. They absolutely got blown out by the Celtics. And this is in the first round of the playoffs. This is a team that went to the NBA Finals the year before. So a couple of days later, there was a press conference, and it was a hastily called press conference. They gave us about an hour or so advance notice that the press conference was going to be held. And I'm located in the Wells Fargo Center in our studios in our newsroom. And I actually was sitting with my boss at the time. His name is Tom Stathakis, who was overseeing the news product. And we're sitting and we're talking. We hear it, and he goes, "Hey, Neil, why don't you find out why that SOB doesn't practice?" And I go, "It's a legitimate question." And the reason it's a legitimate question, because throughout the entire season, Larry Brown would always say, "Allen doesn't practice hard. He's not at practice sometimes." And he was the one that brought it up. As reporters, and my main job was an anchor, but on occasion, I would go cover the teams. And certainly that 2001 team, I covered the entire playoffs. What's that? About 3 months long. I mean, it's a long. Yeah. Playoffs are long. They're tiring and they're long.
April to June.
But when Tom brought that up, it's a legitimate question. Larry Brown raised it, and reporters never could see what happens because where they practiced at the time at Philadelphia Osteopathic, PCOM, where they call it, right on City Avenue in Philadelphia, there was a blinders that they would cover the window so you couldn't see what's going on. And then they would raise it for the last 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you just see players just kind of shooting around and that type of thing. So we never knew, but we go by what Larry Brown's telling us. So it was about 4 or 5 minutes into the press conference, and I asked the question to Allen. I said, "Allen, something that's been raised by your coach, Larry Brown, all season long is about your practicing habits. What can you enlighten us about your practicing habits?" and what he had to say. And he answered the question in the beginning, just kind of saying stuff, and then it just kind of clicked. For whatever reason, it just clicked. And he went, here we are, we're talking about practice. Not a game, not a game. We're talking practice. And then he went back to me a couple of times and he goes, you see me play, right? I give everything I have. And I said, absolutely. He goes, I'll work my tail off. And then, so there's a little bit of exchange, probably about my session with him probably went about maybe 2-3 minutes. And then other reporters chimed in, and Ashley Fox, who worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time, asked the question, well, Alan, what I think we're getting at is if you practice with your teammates, they're going to improve in game situations. And he goes, how the hell? Favorite line of the whole press conference. So it became this iconic viral moment long before we even had viral moments. Social media wasn't around. It wasn't what it is today. If it wasn't around, it wasn't like it is today by any stretch. And so it was just, it exploded and it went everywhere. And for the 20th anniversary, I'm on ESPN. I'm on, The Athletic did a big story, the Philadelphia Inquirer. I mean, a lot of people brought it up and interviewed me. So in 2016, Alan went into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and there was a press conference at the Final Four in Houston. I was there covering Villanova playing North Carolina. That's the game that Chris Jenkins hit the three, the buzzer beater at mid-court, near past midcourt, and that gave Villanova the championship. Well, the day before was the press conference, and I had a chance to ask Alan. I go, Alan, I was the one who asked you about practice, and he looked at me and go, and I liked you. And he would talk about how his kids at the time were very young, and they had to deal with that every day. He deals with it to this day every day. Every time someone sees him, practice. Oh, wow. Practice. It comes up all the time. He did a commercial last year where he almost took verbatim what he said in the practice press conference, and it was incorporated into the commercial. So that moment is going to last, I guess, for a long period of time. It's going to be on my tombstone or my epitaph, whatever. It's going to be there for a long period of time. That dude's the one that asked the question about practice. And it was a harmless question. I thought it was a legitimate question. And I actually respect Allen Iverson as a player. I think he's a terrific player. He worked his tail off when he was playing and did a lot for the Sixers, and he's immensely popular to this day. So it was kind of a harmless question that turned into this viral moment.
But as reporters and sportscasters, you got to ask hard questions. Sometimes people don't like it, but it's a part of the job.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's a number of things that were going on in Allen's life at that time. Tough loss to the Celtics. Season didn't go the way he wanted. His close friend had passed away earlier that year. There were issues that were raised, and he was having some issues with Larry Brown. They long have rectified those problems and ended up getting along just fine. But it was a tough period for him, and the Sixers press PR person Kara Frascona actually tried to stop it about when it was starting to go off the rails, and then Allen says, "No, I'm finishing this up," and then he kept going on. It is what it is, and it's still out there. So practice, not a game. We're talking practice. And again, my favorite line, how the hell can I make my teammates better by practicing? Love that line.
But you have to practice to make your teammates better. That's just a fact of the matter. You got to make yourself better by practicing. But speaking of Allen Iverson, he recently had a statue outside of the new practice facility in Camden. That was very, very small, by the way. But from what I understand, they cannot have statues outside of the Wells Fargo Center because they're not the owner, and Comcast Spectacor, which owns the Flyers, is. So that's what I was told why they can't have.
Well, there was. I'm trying to think if it's still there. There was a Wilt Chamberlain statue there, but I'm trying to think if Josh Harris owned the Sixers at that time, or the Sixers were owned by Spectacor. Probably by Spectacor, because it was there. It's been there probably about, I'm going to say maybe 15 years. I might be off with some years here, but there was a Wilt Chamberlain. There was, and I believe, I'm trying to think. I just walked by there not like a week or so ago.
Josh Harris bought the 76ers in 2011.
Yeah. So it probably, I'm trying to figure out when that statue. So it was probably before that period when they put the Wilt statue up. It was around that time. Look, I went to Barclays when they did Barclay probably about 5 years ago now. At this point, 4 or 5 years ago, I went when Charles had his statue unveiled at the Sixers practice facility. Look, Alan, and I think what the Sixers are doing, it's great. I think they have this whole row of all these iconic names from Sixers past. If you look at the Sixers franchise and the iconic names that are associated with the franchise, it's impressive. I mean, the Lakers obviously have their share. I mean, other than Michael, Chicago has some for sure, but I mean, just the depth of the names and some huge names in NBA history that are associated with the franchise. Yeah, it's a great honor, and he was humbled by it. And I did talk to some friends that did go to it, and it was a great event. I think the Sixers have done a really nice job with that whole statue walk that they've created in Camden.
Yes, and a lot of people for Allen Iverson, he played from '96, being the first overall pick. And then played in, until like 2010, 2011 here in the area. He did come back after making stops in Denver and Memphis, I believe it was. A lot of people, a lot of Philadelphians could give a lot of credit to Iverson, because what he's done in this game is truly unbelievable. And when he was playing, like you said, 01, he was the only god. Like, they had the Dikembe Mutombo, they had Aaron McKee, they had
Eric Snow,
Tyrone
Hill, George Lynch. Look, what Larry Brown did on that team was he put unbelievable role players that play the role. Now, they made a trade. It was kind of controversial at the time. They traded Theo Ratliff for Dikembe Mutombo because Theo was hurt, and they knew that they needed, if they were going to play in the finals, they were going to play Shaq, and they needed someone that can match up with Shaq, and that's why Mutombo was brought on board. But Theo was having a great year that season. But again, it was Allen Iverson, and Aaron McKee was sixth man of the year. Aaron was a good scorer, but again, George Lynch, Eric Snow, Tyrone Hill. These players are they're average NBA players who fit a role perfectly under a Hall of Fame coach's attention. And so I think that team was overachievers, but Allen Iverson was an overachiever. I mean, the guy he's not that big. Yeah, I'm 6'2". I mean, he's not that big. But he's strong as heck, wiry, bony as hell. Like like in that press conference, he talked about, you want me to be all swole? Like, he's just, he was a fun guy to watch. And when he would do this and try to get the fans going, the Sixers, even during that Barkley era, never were able to sell out. In fact, I've been to playoff games when it was at the Spectrum, and they wouldn't sell out for a playoff game. Then Allen came on board, and then that train got going, and then it became one of the hottest tickets in town. And now it's a hot ticket again. So, but it was Allen Iverson who got basketball back and people wanting to follow basketball, and give him a lot of credit for creating that atmosphere.
Yeah, and he started it, but unfortunately, then you had the process years, and now they're back to doing good again. Well,
we'll see how things unfold tomorrow night in Game 3. But look, the process got you Joel Embiid. That's about it. That's about all the process got you, is Joel Embiid. Now, Joel Embiid's a pretty special player.
Yes,
but they went through a lot of top draft picks, and they struck out, Ben Simmons included, which is surprising to me. I thought he was actually going to be a pretty good player. And it just look what's happened since he left Philadelphia. He's literally done nothing.
Exactly. So, and Markelle Fultz, who's in Orlando, or last known in Orlando, I don't know where he is today. I think.
Yeah, that was a massive miss, And massive misses like that come back to haunt you. I mean, look, you could have gotten Jason Tatum, and you didn't.
Exactly.
And the Celtics, give Danny Ainge credit, man. He pulled off a great deal to get Jason Tatum and get a draft pick and give the Sixers what they wanted in Markelle Fultz. Hey, yeah, sure, you can have Fultz. Yeah. Give me a pick and you can have. Yeah, it didn't work out.
He's still in Orlando.
Yeah.
I have a guest comment from Eddie Goldsby. He says, "Do you have a favorite sports memory growing up?"
Well, this one's a little unusual. I mentioned I had a high school radio station, and I grew up about an hour outside of New York City. So I did go to Yankee games, Knick games at Madison Square Garden, the old Yankee Stadium. I think I'm 2 generations removed from the older stadium. So in the mid to late 70s, I would cover the Yankees. The Yankees were pretty good during that time. And I forget the year. I'm going to say it's like 76, 77. They held the All-Star game at Yankee Stadium. And I'm a young kid at the time. I'm like 15 years old. I'm a young kid. And I go to the All-Star game, and there they had honorary captains. And the honorary captain for the American League was Joe DiMaggio. And Joe DiMaggio, one of the greats of all time, was being interviewed by a gentleman in the dugout. And I'm a young reporter, and I just walk up and I stick my microphone right in front of Joe DiMaggio while he's talking to this reporter. At the end of his conversation with that reporter, or the end of answering finishing up his answer, he then looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And he's asking me that. He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, I'm interviewing you." He goes, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I go, "I'm Neil Hartman. I work for WWPT. I'm interviewing you." And he goes, you shouldn't be here." And he's giving me guff. And in hindsight, looking at what really irked him was, one, I was a young kid. You would think he would almost give me the benefit of the doubt and just be kind of nice to me. But players, I think he just wanted that interviewing with one person. Like, I don't know what his deal was with that person who was interviewing him. He didn't want multiple people, just me sticking my mic in there. Otherwise, he could have had, what they would call a gangbang, where you have all these reporters all around this athlete interviewing that person. So that was my experience with Joe DiMaggio, where he kind of called me out and kind of said, "What are you doing there?" And look, you got to go through moments like that when you're a young broadcaster. You're going to have these moments when you're not taken seriously, or you're doing something wrong and you didn't know it was wrong at the time. And again, I kind of realized, all right, that older player, he just wanted to talk to one reporter, where both players in that day and age wanted to talk to multiple reporters at the same time. So, or he was just doing this exclusive interview with this person, and I just walked in. So whatever it was a memorable moment for me in an exchange with Joe DiMaggio that, look, it happened some 50 years ago, something like that, close to 50 years ago, and I still remember it to this day.
So 1976 All-Star game was here in Philadelphia. 1977 was in New York.
New York, 77. Okay, there you go. So yeah, 77 in New York, I was 16 years old. So yeah, how about that?
And you talk about young moments. So I'll talk about my young moments. So when I was just getting started, I worked at the Burlington County Times in Willingboro, New Jersey. And then after that, I was there for about 6 months. And then I had this issue where nobody would hire me because I didn't have a college degree. So I was like, okay, well, if you're going to play this game, I'll just start my own company and do my own thing. And now I cover sports all over the place. And I do things that newspapers here in this market don't do. Like 13 times I've covered the Heisman Trophy. They don't even send somebody to New York to cover that. So it is what it is.
That's the beauty, Anthony. That's the beauty also of today. So I work with a lot of young people today that look at the industry, and the parents ask, are there jobs still in this industry? And there are plenty of jobs. But the opportunity to be able to create your own content and deliver it like you're doing in this particular podcast, or if you have a YouTube channel, or you do it on social media and any of the social channels. You mentioned the Burlington County Times. I had a former student. I began teaching at Rowan, Burlington County, RCBC, and I taught a sports media class there. One of my first students was a young man by the name of Kevin Evans. And Kevin worked for the Burlington County Times for a period of time, but he also created, while he was in my class, he started a Twitter page called the South Jersey Sports Zone, and he started covering local high school sports. And this is probably like some 7 years ago at this point. And Kevin, to this day, I still keep in touch with him, and he's now still covering games. He actually works for the Pemberton School District, but he's also getting a chance to be able to go out there and cover sporting events because he created this platform, and he has this reputation of being a really good quality journalist covering high school sports. So yeah, that's the thing that's really unique about this day and age that we're in now is how you can create your own content.
Yes, and that wasn't that has developed over time, but that wasn't there.
Yeah, you were pretty early in that. Yeah. For sure. Yep.
So I launched my company in 2007, March 1st, 2007. And there's some people who had internet before me, or not internet, but websites way before me, like ESPN did. Yeah. But like now it's like everyone got a website.
Yeah.
It feels like that. And unfortunately, as an independent, non-affiliated with anybody major, sometimes it does hurt me because they're like, oh, there's all these fan people who want to try to get credentials. Then it hurts me because I'm not affiliated with ESPN or Fox Sports or whoever. And so, like, speaking of Philadelphia teams, like the Flyers, the Eagles, the Phillies, 76ers, won't even allow me a credential to get in despite having millions of views on my platform. I don't get it.
Just keep doing what you're doing. As long as you're getting some, the views, impressions, all that, I would keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, that's what I plan to do. I'm not giving up. Philadelphia is a critical sports market, as we both know. It's one of the largest markets in the country. I believe it's within the top 15 in the country. I could be wrong, Neil. Isn't it?
I think it's right now number 4 or 5.
Okay, number 4.
5. I think it's 5.
So when you are covering these events, when you were, and I see it today, fans are very ruly. They can be very ruly. They can be very jerks with media people. At games, they don't. If your team stinks, they're gonna call you out on it. So what was it like for you as a reporter, as a sportscaster, working in this market where fans are very critical of the teams that play in this area?
Well, I think you have to have thick skin for starters. You can't allow someone's remarks or emails or phone calls or whatever it might be affect what you think you're doing the best job you possibly can do. As long as you do the best you can do and you're doing it for all the right reasons, some people might disagree with what you're doing or reporting. People have criticized me for asking Allen Iverson the question about practice. You're entitled to do that. That's your opinion. You're more than welcome. Some people, it comes out during every year when we hit the date of May and it comes out the press conference, or April, I guess it is. And it comes out and people say, that wasn't a legitimate question and things like that. Hey, you're entitled to your opinion. So you have to have thick skin. I think also I take the good with the bad. It doesn't affect me one way or another. I mean, you could pat me on the back and say I'm doing an awesome job, and I'll say thank you. But if you said I suck and don't do a good job and all that stuff, I'm going to react the same way. I mean, you can't let it affect you. And people can be cruel at times. That's just the nature of people. Then social media can be pretty brutal at times. Fortunately, during the bulk of my career, I didn't have to deal with social media, but I'm sure that even today was probably even more heightened than it was when I was still working in television on a regular basis. So, but I just think it's all part of the business, and you just have to deal with it. Are people unfair at times? For sure, but again, I think they're entitled to they're more than welcome to their opinion.
Yes, and they're paying their hard-earned money to go to sporting events or go to practice, or if they have an open practice, they'll pay to go to that. So they do have a right to their own opinion.
No question.
You were one of the Comcast SportsNet originals with Dee Lynam, Leslie Goodell, Derek Gunn, and Michael Barkham. Do you still talk to these other sportscasters today? I know they're doing other things today. And I think Michael is still the only one there. But do you guys still talk today?
We do. We do. We just had a photographer retire. No, I'm sorry, a director retire probably about 3 weeks ago. His name was Bill Markle, was the director for our studio shows since the inception, pretty much. And he just retired, and so we always when somebody that's been there a long period of time retires, on air, off air, whatever it might be, we always have these get-togethers, and probably about, I'd say 30, 40 of us were all there together. I saw Michael there. I hadn't seen Michael in a little while. Leslie Goodell was not there, but I do talk regularly with Leslie. I saw Leslie probably about a month ago. Dee Lynam, I keep in touch with. I see Dee on a fairly consistent basis. Derek Gunn, I was texting with Derek just last week, so Gunner and I still stay in touch. Pat Boyle's another one that was one of the originals. He's now in Chicago. He's the main anchor in Chicago. I keep in touch with Pat, and there was let's see, who am I missing there in that group? Anybody I missed? I'm trying to think.
Not that I know of.
I think that's pretty much it. Look, in 1997, when we started Comcast SportsNet, it changed the way sports was covered in this market. We had pregame shows, we had halftime shows, we had postgame shows, we had a news product that would rival ESPN as far as the coverage of these teams in this market. We covered it better than anybody. And for many, many years, the Philadelphia Inquirer was the big behemoth. And then WIP, where I worked as well for 5 years, that was a very powerful station. It is still to this day. But Comcast SportsNet, for I would say a good 12, 15 years, when we emerged into the market, really became a very powerful vehicle covering sports. And it was a absolute pleasure to be part of that experience. Today, it's not the same because these devices right here, that's changed it. It's changed. They don't do a news product really anymore. They do a morning show, and they do a nice job with the morning show that they put together now. But it's just different, and they still do pre and post game shows and halftime shows and all that, and that's still well received. But it's not the same in-depth reporting that we did back in those days. And again, it's a part of the industry's changed. I mean, ESPN went through the same thing. And regional sports networks right now in this country, a lot of them are hitting really hard times. I wouldn't say
a lot of them are in bankruptcy. Bally Sports.
They are correct. So that's how it's all changed. But look, 97, man, we started. We had the Wells Fargo Center was built. It was called First Union Center, but it was built in 1996. That's when it was completed. And Comcast SportsNet went on the air in October of 1997. We started working the summer of 97. So the building was roughly about a year old at the time, but they added on for the studios and office space for Comcast SportsNet. But our first several months, with the exception of the studio, we were working out of trailers in the parking lot. That was our newsroom. Wow. So it was pretty unique, but those were really, really special times. And to be part of something that became what Comcast SportsNet became, and now NBC Sports Philadelphia. Comcast started here in Philadelphia with Comcast SportsNet, NBC, and now NBC Sports Philly. But then they went to Bethesda,
Maryland,
Washington D.C., Bethesda, Maryland. We call it Comcast SportsNet Mid-Atlantic. Then they added one in Chicago. They added one in San Francisco. They added one in Portland, Oregon. They added one in Atlanta. So all these new channels all emerged, and one in Boston too. All these emerged because of the success here in Philadelphia. So I take a lot of pride in that. That's pretty cool. That's neat to see that kind of growth. Now, all those channels, they're all different today, but for a period of time, it was just a really, really neat experience to have everybody working the way we were at Comcast SportsNet.
Do you miss not reporting on sports? Also, did you miss, since you left Comcast SportsNet in 2016, and the Eagles had their successful Super Bowl run in 2017. Did you miss being a part of that as well, even though Derek Gunn was the Eagles reporter, but you could still report on it as well?
Yeah, I don't look back. I'm really happy in the second career that I've created now, being in higher education. I don't miss being a sports broadcaster. I've dabbled a little bit here and there. I've done some special projects here and there as far as an on-air career, but it's not something that I'm dying to do. I had a 35-year career as a sportscaster. I'm good. I really had some wonderful moments in my life, and that industry was really, really good to me. And so when there's a big sporting event, I'll watch, but I'm not dying to be there. I've covered Super Bowls when the Eagles went to Jacksonville, and in 05, that was a really cool moment. We were there for 10 days, and Gunnar and I are right on the St. John River there, reporting with a beautiful set that we had created, and that was fun. And so I've had a chance to cover Super Bowls and World Series and Olympics and all the big moments in sports I've been able to cover, and I feel very, very grateful for that. So I don't have any second thoughts about wanting to be at a big event. I like kind of hanging out at home watching it. Although I did go to the Flyers last game of the regular season against the Washington Capitals, so I went to that game. I've gone to some Sixer playoff games from time to time, generally with my son. Who's a big sports fan, and so I'll do that. I've gone to Phillies playoff games in the last few years. I've gone with my family. It's a different experience when you go and in the stands and watch it as a fan. It's so massively different than when I would go and cover it, because you're not, in the press box, you're not clapping, you're not enjoying it, you're not in the thralls of all these people that are really getting into the moment. So it's it's just different, but I've enjoyed that part of it. That's pretty neat.
The NFL draft is tomorrow, and the Philadelphia Eagles will have a selection tomorrow. You'll likely watch it from home.
Yeah.
What do you think the Eagles will do tomorrow? Some pundits believe that they'll likely draft a cornerback, despite already having James Bradbury and Darius Slay as their starting quarterbacks.
Well, I think we all agree. That they need help in the secondary. So they have to do something to improve the secondary. They've done a little work on their linebacking core, which obviously needs some help. Howie always tends to like to get some linemen, some offensive linemen. I think maybe defensive linemen as well. They have a lot of weapons offensively, but I think you gotta really shore up that defense, and I think you need to improve the depth of the offensive line. Lane Johnson's not getting younger. You obviously lost Kelsey, so maybe a offensive lineman for a year or two down the road. They've tended to do that, where they kind of have them work with Coach Stoutland for a while, and then kind of incorporate them into the offense on a very, very slow period to get them acclimated to the NFL. I would go defensive back and some cornerback. Sure. I mean, they say it's a deep draft for that. I do think history tells us that with 2 second-round picks, that Howie's probably going to move from 22 and might move with giving one of those second-round picks to move up if they have a player identified that they really like. But I'm gonna say Howie's going to make a move. He does it every year. So I'm going to say he's going to make a move. They don't have a 3rd-round pick. Here's a really neat story. We have a student that is going to be I'm at Rowan University. You mentioned that earlier, but we have a student that is going to be announcing the Eagles pick late on one of the late rounds on Saturday.
Oh, cool.
He's a young man with autism, and the Eagles are obviously very, very involved in autism. And he's in my program, and I'm just so happy and thrilled that's going to happen on Saturday. So good for the Eagles. They've done a lot of great things for the community, and I'm excited about the draft. We got a busy night tomorrow, man. We got a lot going on. It's going to be pretty neat. It's going to be pretty neat.
In your opinion, what do you think happened towards the end of the season last year with the Eagles? They just fell apart and they were flat, and they just went on this kind of losing streak besides beating the Giants on Christmas. They lost like 5 or 6 games at the end of the season, including.
So what I think happened, I think, first of all, confidence plays a massive factor in the success in sports. And when you start losing confidence and doubt what you're doing, that's one factor. 2, I think 2 coordinators that were new at their job and both did not know how to react to what was happening. And so I'm not saying they're bad coaches. They just weren't prepared for what they had to experience last year during that downturn. And I think Jalen didn't have a great year. That's a factor. And then defensively, Howie made a mistake. They didn't have the proper defensive help that they needed. We all knew, based of coming off the Super Bowl, they were going to lose some great players. And they did. They lost some really, really good players. But they didn't pay any attention to the linebacking core at all. They got beat up in the secondary, and some guys just had bad years. And then Hassan Reddick was massively misplayed. There's just a lot of factors that came into the downturn of last year. I still think they're a good team. I still think they have a lot of offensive weapons. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the Saquon Barkley move. I hope I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I just think he's a great player. He's 28. Is he still going to be a great player? I don't know.
He's often injured.
Often injured. Yeah. Guys like that, like Joel Embiid, a phenomenal player. We know he's going to get hurt. He gets hurt every year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of times it's around the playoffs. So Saquon's gotten hurt a lot. He's an immense talent when he's healthy. But that's a factor. And I don't know if I'd give him 3 years and whatever the millions they gave him.
I think it was like 40 million.
Yeah.
Close to it, I think it was. 38 million, I think it was. But I don't know. Maybe there was some infighting. Who knows? There was some speculation. Maybe something with A.J. Brown. I don't know. I'm not.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they respond. You have some experienced coordinators now.
Yes, Vic
Fangio and Moore are 2 experienced coordinators. So you have gone from inexperienced coordinators to experienced coordinators. Let's see how that all revolves around now.
Oh, Eddie had another question. He said, what was the idea for Comcast SportsNet?
The idea was to be able to cover sports in the Philadelphia market the way ESPN covered it nationally, so that you had these pregame and postgame shows, and that Comcast was able to promote. They owned the Sixers and the Flyers at the time. They owned the building. The Phillies were a 25% partner in the channel when it started in 1997. Then the Phillies went away, and now they're back again as a partner of the channel at NBC Sports Philadelphia. So it just was an opportunity to be able to cover sports in this city unlike it was ever covered before. And we had regional networks. We had Prism, we had Sports Channel, but nothing to the extent and to the depth of coverage that we provided, particularly in the early years of Comcast SportsNet. So that was the vision of Brian Roberts, to bring this to the table, and it worked. It worked for a long period of time. And the real reason for all that was they wanted to sell cable systems. They wanted you to buy cable. They wanted you to be able to go and say, I'm going to pay extra so I can watch the Phillies, Flyers, and Sixers, that I can watch Sports Night, the sports news show, that I can watch the pregame shows and watch all that. That was a valuable tool. There was a period of time when Comcast SportsNet was the main reason the strongest cable penetration in the nation was in Philadelphia, and it was all attributed to Comcast SportsNet. That's why they started it, from a financial and business reason.
Wow. I didn't know that. Here's also another thing that maybe Eddie and other people don't know. When you pay your cable bill, you pay X amount of dollars to have ESPN and everyone else on. You pay X amount of dollars to have these channels.
Yes, you're paying a, I don't even know what the number is now. I have it. I don't even know what it is. Um, but look, if you want to watch the Phillies, Flyers, or Sixers, you have to get Comcast SportsNet, or you can get YouTube TV. I know there's other outlets now, but back in
Yeah,
those days,
there
they
was.
didn't give it to anybody. You had to get Comcast SportsNet.
Yeah,
Nowadays, you can get it on YouTube. You can get it on DirecTV, or you got a lot of different areas where you can get it. I mean, DirecTV is not even a real player now. YouTube TV does have it, and there's other ways to be able to get NBC Sports Philadelphia if you want to watch the local teams.
speaking back to Philadelphia sports, we talked about this a few seconds ago. The Philadelphia 76ers return home tomorrow. They're currently in an 0-2 hole to the New York Knicks, who are the number 2 seed. The 76ers are the number 7 seed. Joel Embiid is obviously not healthy. From what I'm being told, he's about 50% with his injury. It may require an offseason surgery. I don't know if you know that. But do you give the 76ers any chance to come back in the series?
Yeah, they should have won game 2. They could have won game 1, should have won game 2, and we'll see how those New York bench players play in a hostile environment at the Wells Fargo Center. I think they got rejuvenated and energized with that crowd in New York. That's a factor. I do think now if the Sixers fall behind by 12, 13, 14, 15 points, then the crowd becomes a negative factor for the Sixers. But look, the energy of the crowd, I do believe the Sixers, even with Embiid, and I'm going to put him at above 50%. I'm going to say he's about 75%, only because look at the numbers he's putting up, even though he is kind of – the only thing he can't do is rebound, and that's a massive factor because of the way they've been out-rebounded. And even in that last play the other night, to not be able to get a rebound, and you got to find a way to get a rebound. So I think they absolutely have a chance. Look, Tyrese Maxey's solid player. You need a third. Someone's got to pick it up. So there's got to be a third wheel. Is it Batum? Is it Tobias Harris? Is it someone else off the bench? Who's going to do it? But somebody has to show that they can score 15 points and provide some relief for both Embiid and Maxey.
Yeah, we'll have to see who that is, whether it's Tobias Harris or Nick Batum or Kelly Oubre, someone. We'll have to see.
Yep.
And as you know, Neil, the Knicks, it's actually a little homecoming for 3 of the Knicks players because they got the Nova 3 with Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart.
Yeah, so I think one thing that you're seeing out of this New York team, and it's exemplifies a Villanova player, is their heart. They have them, and I know Josh Hart, but they have. I'm talking about this right here. They have heart. They are extremely tough-minded, and I think that is complementing their rebounding skills. They didn't give up the other night when I definitely thought the game was over. And so you got to give him a lot of credit. And that goes back to Jay Wright. That's the kind of players he would kind of create and build and develop, and won 2 national championships in 3 years because of it. And so that's what those New York Knicks players are doing. And Jalen Brunson's tough as nails. Josh Hart, tough as nails. Dante DiVincenzo is a really tough player. So they're a tough team. And then you throw the big guys that have been playing, Robinson, Earthstein, those guys. I mean, they're all playing unbelievably well. So, and McBride comes off the bench. He scores like threes left and right. I'm like, where's this guy coming from? So all this stuff is making it a very interesting series. But I do think the Sixers can definitely make this a very interesting series going deep into the playoffs. In this round, not deep into this series.
Okay. The Phillies have had a red October for the past 2 seasons, including a trip to the World Series in 2022. Do you think manager Rob Thompson has enough talent to bring Philadelphia its 3rd World Series championship this season?
It's not even a question mark. They have the talent. Now, the Dodgers have a lot of talent. The Braves got a lot of talent. There's some teams out there that have a lot of talent. Look, Texas has a lot of talent. I mean, there's teams with talent. But the way they've set up the pitching rotation now with
Wheeler,
the way Wheeler and Nola and now Ranger Suarez is pitching, they are in phenomenal shape with three really quality starters. Now 4 and 5 are going to be interesting how they kind of develop that over the course of the season. Not everyone's hitting right now, but when they do, they have the weapons to be able to hit with anybody. Yeah, I think the Phillies are going to be right there. I mean, they beat up on some pretty poor teams in the White Sox, and also with the White Sox, and before that,
wasn't it?
Yeah, so they lost. They swept 3 games and then won 3 more against the White Sox, who are probably the worst team in baseball right now. I mean, they are the worst team in baseball. I can't believe they're
the White Sox.
No, before the White Sox, who they play?
The Rockies, Colorado.
Yeah, the Colorado Rockies. Yeah.
But,
and my friend, and I was just talking to him today. I was texting him today. My friend is a broadcaster for the Rockies. I mean, I think they have 6 wins on the season. I mean, that is one tough. That's tough to broadcast a team when you know you're going into every game. Oh man, we're going to get our brains beat in again today. That is tough. And those White Sox, I was just about to say, I think like 6 of the starters of the everyday players are batting below 200. That is just crazy to think.
Let's see. Right now, the White Sox they're 3-20. The White Sox are.
Yeah.
And they're currently losing to the Twins 4-3. And the Phillies are currently losing to the Reds 5-3, top of the 7th. Yesterday they lost 8-1 to the Reds.
Yeah. After taking a 1-0 lead.
They go on a humongous road trip. They go right now. They're in.
It's the longest road trip I think of the year. They're on a 10-game road trip.
Padres and then the Los Angeles Angels.
Yep.
And then they don't come back until San Francisco May 3rd. Neil, you talked about being at the last game of the Flyers season. Unfortunately, they lost 2-1 to the Washington Capitals. The Flyers were not expected to even be in the playoff hunt this year with Daniel Briere, Keith Jones leading the front office. And then, unfortunately, some people blamed Tortorella for kind of eliminating themselves because it was 1-1 and then some stuff happened. What was your thoughts on the Flyers this season?
Well, look, there was a long period of time when they were a playoff team and they were heading in a really, really positive direction. Totally unexpected. No one expected them to be able to turn it around the way they did. And yet then they had that horrible losing streak at the worst time, and they tried to resurrect it late in the year. And that last game of the year that I went to against the Capitals was a really, really well played game. It was a playoff atmosphere. Fans were really, because the Flyers win, they needed some help. And at the time, the way that some other teams were playing, it looked like they might have a shot. But then they had to win in regulation. So they had to pull the goalie. And unfortunately, the Caps then scored, and Washington goes on to go in the playoffs against the Rangers. But look, I just think what Keith Jones and Danny Briere, I'm a huge fan of both. I think they're going to bring back the pride of playing for the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm also a huge fan of Dan Hilferty, who's the CEO now or head of Comcast SportsNet and running the Flyers organization. It's a great mix of Philadelphia people, both players and executive, that understand the Flyers and their history and the value that they bring to the city and what it means to the city about the orange and black. So I think they have nothing but a very positive future ahead of them. And it's right now, they've got some assets, draft picks that I think they'll be able to build this club up. I know that's what Keith Jones talked about trying to find ways to not do this really in a hurry. We're not trying to do, some kind of quick turnaround. We're trying to slowly build this back up so that they're a perennial power year in and year out. And that's something that I think everybody should applaud. They were heading in that direction ahead of schedule, And unfortunately, it didn't work out this year. But I would fully expect them to be in the playoffs next year and to be a much more competitive team. And I like Tortorella. I think Tortorella's done a nice job. I think Jonesy and Barrere have kind of calmed him down a little bit. He in the beginning of the year, he would actually you could see him kind of praising the players. They lose a game, and he's kind of taking a very soft approach, unlike his previous years or previous coaching stops. He got a little antsy there at the end of the year, but look, I can't blame him. It was a tough way to finish the year, but overall, I would say it was a very positive year.
As you know, and I know, the Flyers used to go big name hunting in the offseason. They didn't do that with our New Jersey guy who actually landed in Columbus.
Johnny Gaudreau.
Johnny Hockey, they call him. They decided not to go with him, and Chuck Fletcher was the GM. Mm-hmm. But years ago, if you were a big name in the National Hockey League, and when it comes to free agent time, the Flyers would come hunting for you and trying to sign you. Do you think they would try to do that again? But now you have a salary cap, so you got to watch what you do.
That's not their philosophy. So the answer is no. I don't see them doing that. I see them building methodically through the draft, young players, creating this wealth of talent within the organization and kind of building them up. They've got a couple young players that they have the rights to that are not Flyers property yet, that are overseas. That my understanding, those are going to be some really top-notch players in years to come. The reason the Flyers went for big-name talent, I think of Jeremy Roenick, for example, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention.
And it was all because of Ed Snyder. Ed Snyder had no patience. And God bless him, he was a wonderful man, did a lot for this city. But what he wanted, he wanted to win. Yeah. Each year, he's going to do everything he can. All right, pay the money. Let's get this guy here. So he would go after the big name players. And so, for many years, the Flyers were a very competitive team. I covered them in the playoffs many times, but that's not I don't think that's the philosophy that Danny Briere and Keith Jones have. They have a different philosophy. And so far, I think I would give them a pretty good grade for what they did this past season.
And they got that Russian guy, Ivan Fotov, the
goalie. Yeah, he's a big goalie. He's like 6'7". He's a big guy.
Yeah.
And they just signed him, I think, to a 2-year deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we'll see how he does with a full season.
Yeah.
Today, as I mentioned in the intro, you work at Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey. You are part of their Sports Communication and Social Impact Center. For those that do not know, that are listening to this or will listen to this, what do you do at Rowan University?
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Director of the Center for Sports Communication and Social Impact. And what that means is the center supports the Sports Communication and Media major. So about a little over 5 years ago, we established a major at Rowan University. I've been there a little under 5 years, so it was established before I was there. John Giannini, the former LaSalle basketball coach, was the founding director of the center. John is now our AD, and he was in my role for about 10 months. And then John and I are friends, and I was at Temple University at the time. He says, "Hey, Neil, this is a really good job for you. I think you're fit in perfectly." And then I came over, and I now work with Dr. Emil Steiner, who is a PhD, who handles the curriculum. I handle a lot of the mentoring and guest speakers and external partners, and I work with the students very closely. So our sports communication and media program now has close to 400 students. And our students are pursuing, broadcasting, production, social media, public relations. We have an esports concentration. There's a lot of different areas they can go on and pursue some kind of advanced degree if they want to go into some kind of teaching role or research or things along those lines. So it's just been a really, really neat experience for me because I enjoy the interaction that I have with the students. It's very rewarding. And our program is doing unbelievably well. So we are now, in just 5 years, we believe we're the largest sports communication and media program in the country. We have just grown leaps and bounds, and and I don't see us stopping anytime soon. So we're in the process of hiring some new professors now, and it's a very exciting time to be at Rowan University.
That's good. That's amazing that you're helping in the next generation. And Eddie has another question for you. How do you teach your students the next generation of sports content and how they react in a positive environment?
Yeah, so I mentioned this a little earlier. Parents are concerned because they see what happened in newspapers and they go, oh, are there any
Newspapers
jobs
are
out there?
dead.
Yeah, they're jobs. Radio is not the way, even though WIP is a very strong, powerful voice in Philadelphia, radio is at least local radio is not as popular as it was, 15, 20 years ago. Now you have all the XM radio, Sirius XM and all that, and satellite radio, and then just the ability to be able to get whatever kind of music you want. So all that's changed. However, what I would say, and this is what I do tell parents, we didn't have social media. We didn't have these devices back when you were growing up as a parent, and we didn't have those. The content division. So Comcast SportsNet, when I was there, we probably had 75 people in our newsroom. Today, there's probably 30 people. I mean, it's probably a third of what we had. And it's because the jobs have not just evaporated. Now the teams have these type of content jobs. There are more, I think it's 22 last check, 22 people in the content division with the Philadelphia Eagles. So they have their own newsroom. They have their own people who are creating social media content and putting things on their website and preparing for game day presentation. And all that's now controlled by the team. Now, and yes, they have their own TV studio and they do their own TV shows. So it has changed dramatically, but the jobs are still there. So that's where I try to emphasize to not only our students, but to parents that, look, your son, daughter, they have an opportunity to really excel in this industry. It's just different, and it's presented differently than when you had the opportunity to pursue your career when you were growing up.
Yes, it's all social media content creation geared now, and that's like a podcast, putting stuff online, doing these reels today. You'll see them on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, it's look. We have a very at Rowan in my center. We have a very active social media. I have an intern. I have a staff person. We're active on all social media platforms, and YouTube as well. YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and clearly X and Instagram, and all the different ways you can share your content on those platforms. It's really it's an unbelievable way to be able to inform an audience about what's going on. These students, I'll tell you what, they keep track of what's going on everywhere, and that's now their faces are in their phones quite a bit, but there is some advantage to it as well.
That could be a bad thing. Recently on campus, you had a very famous guest. You had ESPN sports commentator Stephen A. Smith, who grew up in the South Jersey area, come to campus to talk to 800 guests, and mostly students and some public people that may have got in. I know in your LinkedIn post, you said you had to close the doors because they couldn't fit everybody. And it was a big moment for you guys to have Stephen A. Smith there to talk to the students. What was that like to bring him in?
So I've known Stephen for a long time. I mean, he worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer for about 15 years. We had a lot of interaction back in those days. So I'm familiar with him. Actually, the last time I saw him, he did live, as you pointed out, here in South Jersey. He didn't live far from where I live. And I saw him in a CVS. It was with my daughter, and there's I turn around. This is a handful of years ago, but I turn around. There's Stephen A. Up until about a year or so ago, when I saw him in Philly and asked him personally if he would come to Rowan, and he said yes. And it took us a year to be able to work out his schedule. He's an extremely busy guy. He's got a whole staff and team behind him. But he was well worth the wait. Great for our students. Again, 800 students attended, 200 had to be turned away. It was a wonderful night, and it's part of our speaker series. So what we do at Rowan is we have our speaker series where we bring these iconic names. Stephen A. Smith, Charles Barkley, Brian Dawkins have all spoken to our students where we talk in this 800-seat auditorium. But on a weekly basis, we have what we call Pizza with the Pros, where we bring sports industry professionals to campus. They could be a former athlete, an executive, PR, social media production, play-by-play person, sports anchor. I've been doing that now for 5 years. I've never repeated a guest. That's more than 100 guests that have come because we do it for 10 straight weeks in the fall and spring semesters. We just wrapped up our most recent one last week, and that was with Tim McDermott, the president of the Philadelphia Union. And so our students get a chance to ask questions in a Q&A setting that I moderate, but then also afterwards they get a chance to talk and meet with the guest and ask them a question or two. Those interactions have led to more internships and jobs than pretty much anything else we do. And this semester we have 57 students that are taking for credit an internship, and probably an additional 20 that are taking it without credit. So it's a lot of things are working. We expose our students to some incredible guests, and they get a chance to hear what those people, how they've overachieved, challenges to get to where they are today. And it's been wonderful. And also to bring back alumni. I brought back the gentleman named Doug Gospel, who oversees social media for Major League Baseball. And he met one of our students. This is about a year or two ago. And he met one of our students. And 3 months later, he ended up hiring that student who at 22 years old had access in the palm of his hand. There's my phone again, to 30 million social media followers working for Major League Baseball. He's one of 13 people that had access to all social media. So that all came because of Pizza with the Pros. So bringing people to campus, having them interact with our students have accepted that in a very positive way. And it's been, it's been really cool to see it develop over time.
That's amazing. And you said to have 100 people there that are different, that your students can talk to and not rotate the same one over again. It's pretty amazing.
I mean, I could go through the list. I mean, pick any sportscaster, PR person, executive in the Philly market, and I'm going to go, yeah, they've been there. So that's all part of it. And look, our students, they show up in droves too. It's not a class. They come on their own, and they by the way, thank you, Chickies and Pete's. They provide free pizza because it is called Pizza with the Pros. So they get free pizza, and the students, it's been a wonderful program for us to be able to introduce to the students.
You probably had Tom McCarthy, the Phillies announcer.
We have.
I was at the College of New Jersey. I went to the College of New Jersey. I know Rowan and the College of New Jersey are rivals in sports, but that's a different thing. When I went to the College of New Jersey, Pat McCarthy, which is his son, who's now a broadcaster for the Mets. Unfortunately, last year he had a little accident and
he did
got hit by a car, and so hopefully he's doing better now. But he's a broadcaster for the Mets, and Tom was actually a broadcaster for the Mets before coming to the Phillies. So after Harry Karras' passing. Tom has been at Pizza with the Pros, and last semester we had Pat. Actually, this semester we had Pat McCarthy, probably in February. Pat was there, and Pat's doing well after his the accident that he had. He's doing much better, and I just heard a clip that he had the other day. There was a foul ball that came back. He's at Citi Field, and it came back, and he was doing the game, and it hit him in the chest. And he goes, "Oh man, he's saying this on the air. He goes, "Oh man, I just missed it. Here's my opportunity. The ball goes right to me, and it hits my chest, and it hit his laptop." So I don't know what the end result all that was, but he's a really nice young man. He's doing a great job. Filled in for his dad on occasion during Phillies broadcasts. So good for him. He's doing the Mets, and so yeah, about half our students from New Jersey. We're starting to get more from Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware for sure, and some Connecticut and Maryland as well. If I didn't say Maryland and Pennsylvania, a lot from Pennsylvania. But in New Jersey, half our students are from South Jersey, half are from Central and North Jersey. So I really work hard at trying to get people from
the New York market down here. And Pat, fortunately, lives in Bucks County. I've had Craig Carton from WFAN came down. These are all vast majority of the people that I bring are people that I've, have a relationship with, and they're doing us a nice favor in it. But it's really, I think they find it rewarding when they leave. They go, man, that was pretty cool, man, to have a chance to talk to these kids and to have this kind of impact in their lives. It's really special. So, but you just pointed out two good ones. Tom and Pat McCarthy are really two good people.
Yes, and there's Tom, I believe, has like another son or two other sons that are.
He's playing baseball. Yeah. Playing minor league baseball. Yep.
Yeah. Eddie had a question, but I believe we already went over this. WIP, working at WIP, and how that you gained those experiences.
Yeah, so I worked at WIP when in 1989. I worked at WIP. I did the morning show as the update person with Angelo Cataldi and Tom Brookshire when they worked together, and I did that for about 2 years, I'd say. The morning, a little over a year, probably a year and a half. I was a fill-in person for various time periods during the course of the week. I was working full-time at PHL-17 at the time. And then I also did the Charles Barkley radio show, the Reggie White radio show. I did a show with Mike Golick. And I did some other specialty shows. And I was there for about 5 years. And then I went to 12:10 a.m. and we tried to do a competitive sports talk against WIP, just like the Fanatic is doing now here in Philadelphia at 97.5. But 12:10 had the Phillies, so it was myself, Scott Graham, and Big Daddy Graham, and we did a show called The Sports Attack. And I did that for 2 years, and again, another neat experience. But during that period, I transitioned and went over to work for Channel 3. But WIP, look, being there in those early years in 1989, IP as an all sports station started in 88, and just to be part of that experience of watching a all sports talk radio station. At the time, I believe it was Ed Snyder paid $6 million for it when he bought the radio station, and Comcast Sports Spectacor bought it for $6 million. It sold to at the time Infinity Broadcasting for $2 million about 4 years later. So it was really struggling in the early years. I remember religious broadcasters walking through the station to look to see if they wanted to buy it. Again, that was an AM radio station. It was 6:10 a.m. And then when they made the move, probably I think it was around 2011, they made the move to 94 WIP. That was a really good move. That made a lot of sense. And now WIP is still this big powerhouse here in this market.
I'll touch on this very quickly, but it's not a question. I know there's a radio station, Odyssey. It's right now in bankruptcy because it's doing bad.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. I mean, Odyssey owns WIP, it owns WFAN, it owns a number of radio stations all over the country. Their headquarters is here in Philadelphia. It's in the same building. It's the Aramark building. Right there, you could see it off the Schuylkill Expressway in Center City, Philadelphia. And I've been in the facilities, the beautiful facilities. They have all their Philadelphia area radio stations, about 7 or 8 of them are all located. KYW is another one that's there with Odyssey. But they've really hit some hard times, and it's because of the growth of what they tried to do and just keep buying radio stations and the network when they took over CBS Radio. But they did get some infusion from some cash, I believe, not too long ago, and I think those bankruptcy. I don't think they ever filed for bankruptcy, but they are certainly hit some tough financial times. But from a radio station perspective, WIP and WFAN are two of the most successful radio stations. So no matter what happens to Odyssey, those two radio stations will still thrive, whoever the owner is, because they're very valuable products.
So they Odyssey they are trying to, as of March 2024, they're trying to emerge from Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Odyssey received a court of approval for a reorganization plan in February 2024. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, but I do know fusion of cash from from an investor that I think will hopefully stabilize the company. And look, it's never easy to work in that environment when you have, John Marks, who did Drive Time on the radio, actually cited the financial concerns of Odyssey when he decided to leave, working in afternoon drive time for a number of years. So,
But didn't he announce his retirement?
well, I mean, he's a young guy. He's not retiring. He's
I
just
know, but he
he
acted
said
like
he's
yeah.
left. So I don't, I'm sure he's going to probably emerge somewhere along the lines. Yeah, but I don't know John at all, really. But I can understand his concerns about the financial stability of Odyssey.
Yes. Finally, Neil, we touched on this before we began. You told me about this, and I think it's important, and I want to touch on this. So, you told me in the summertime you do 5 1-week sports broadcasting camps for kids, and to work with kids between 10 and 18 years old who want to follow in your footsteps to be successful in this field and to give back to them. What does that mean to you? That got to be very special to do these projects to help out the kids of the next generation.
Yeah, so the company's called Play-by-Play Sports Broadcasting Camps. Play-by-Play Sports Broadcasting Camps. They're based in the Philadelphia area, and in 2001 was their first year. It was started by a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Treatman, and his partner is Stephen Goldstein, his business partner, and together they have really created the biggest sports broadcasting camps in the country. We're in 14 cities all over the country. I am the director of 6 camps. You're talking about kids. Our Philly camp will probably have this year close to 130, 140 kids, 10 to 18. We do it at Villanova. So I run that camp with Jeremy, but then I run the camp in Seattle, Washington, at the University of Washington, Denver, Colorado, at the University of Denver. In Chicago, I do it at a hotel. And, these are overnight and day camps, and I do it in Washington, D.C. as well, and at a TV studio. And then in Philadelphia, we do it at Villanova. And then we have a studio in Manayunk that we do an advanced camp where kids who are 16 to 22 who have real commitment to this industry. We work with them in a very close environment, very personalized environment. But yeah, kids 10 to 18, those 10-year-olds, they don't know what they want to do most of the time, but some of them do. And I'm amazed at some of the abilities of these kids that have really spent a lot of time working on a podcast and doing things on YouTube and writing for their own website and all these different things that these young kids are doing. So any kind of encouragement we can give them, any kind of advice. The camps are fun. They're not just running around and doing the different taping of shows and all that, which we do, but it's also some fun and game stuff that are all sports generated. And the secret sauce is the counselors. We have some, a lot of our former campers are counselors now. We've been around for so long that these counselors work with the kids, and then they have just this great rapport. And so the overnight guys have a ton of fun. It's hard work. It's very tiring. I'm there for a week at a time, but sleeping with, in the dorms and having the kids run around, it can get a little hectic at times, but it's really enjoyable. And I'm proud to be part of sports broadcasting, play-by-play sports broadcasting camps. It's been a really, really neat experience for me. So go to playbyplaycamps.com, and that's where you'll see the information about the camps, and come join us in one of the cities.
Thank you, Neil, for your time tonight, talking about your sports career and now your institution career at Rowan University. I didn't know if I said that right, but you're now like an educator and teaching the next generation.
I'm an academic.
Yeah.
Actually, what we call myself is Dr. Steiner is the academic. I'm the practitioner. So practitioner is someone who comes from the industry. So that's what I am. But yes, I work with a bunch of academics today.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time. Outside of being on Facebook Live and YouTube Live right now, this will be uploaded to Rumble, BitChute, Humex, and Spotify for podcasters, and then it will be available on the podcast apps like Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts from there. Thanks again for your time tonight, Neil.
My pleasure.